Hi everyone! So today's video I am about to tell you all of the details about all of the foundations in all of the drugstores. I mean, they may not be in all of the drugstores, but you know, most of the drugstores. I would say I am an expert in this category. A little background history on my makeup wearing and my skin. I had really bad acne in 7th grade, probably 6th or 7th grade. I really don't know when it started. And I started wearing makeup in 6th grade. I convinced my mom to let me wear clear mascara, and I think we did blush and powder, and then she took us, me and my sister, to the Clinique counter, and they taught us how to apply eyeliner and actual mascara, not just clear mascara. And then from there, my passion has just grown. So I've been wearing makeup since 6th grade. I've probably been wearing foundation since 7th grade, and I am out of high school now, so I've had a solid 7 or 8 years wearing makeup. So in middle school, my skin was very oily and it was very acne prone. So those were the two things that I had to base my foundation around. I don't really think I achieved getting like an oil-free foundation, because I remember taking those little oil blotting sheets everywhere I went, and I would use them multiple times a day, and so definitely had some out of control oil glands. And then I definitely wore foundation to cover up the acne. It wasn't necessarily that I was insecure about it, it's just, you know, sometimes you prefer to cover up all the redness. And people say, like, why, like, I don't know, I hear people get bullied for wearing foundation whenever they have a lot of acne, because you can still see the acne, but it makes people feel more, it makes people feel better about themselves if they can cover it up and make it less red, and I totally understand that. And then so I lived in Nebraska at that time, which is like humid and, you know, regular seasons and whatever. Then 8th grade year, we moved to Colorado, where I currently live, and 8th grade year was the same as middle school, but then freshman year of high school, I went on a medicine called Accutane, which is like a really hardcore acne fighting. After that point, Accutane dries out your skin, like, insanely bad. Like, my lips were always dry. I had to lotion myself all the time. And then, adding to that, the weather in Colorado is dry, and it's dry in the winter, it's dry in the summer, it's dry all the time. So now my skin is insanely dry. Like, I moisturize my face probably 5 times a day. And, it's not acne prone anymore. Like, sure, I get a couple pimples here and there, but it's definitely clear, and my main focus isn't to cover up my acne. And then what I'm like grading these foundations on is their coverage. So I have some light, some medium, and some full coverage foundations in my list. The overall comfort, so how it sits on your skin, and the dry feeling, you know, because that's a big thing for me. If you're oily, the dry thing might not be for you, but comfort also applies to, like, if a foundation's super heavy and you can just feel it all throughout the day, just like if you took your fingernail and scratched it, like, you think there would just be like a cave because the foundation's so heavy. That also applies to comfort. And then transfer proof power is what I wrote down. So just testing how well the foundations don't transfer, if that makes any sense. So I kind of separated this by brand, but the only brand that has multiple foundations is Maybelline in this, so we're starting with Maybelline foundations. So first of all, there's the Maybelline Matte and Poreless foundation, and then there's the Maybelline Smooth and Dewy foundation. I said that these foundations are both very thin formulas. You shake them, you mix them up, and then you pour it on your hand, or if you want to pour it on your face, I guess you could do that. But you pour it out. One thing to note is that some people don't like the pouring foundations. This foundation doesn't have a pump. It's a thin formula. It sits really nice on the skin. Talking about the matte and poreless, not the dewy and smooth. It sits really nice on the skin. I'd say it's like a medium coverage foundation. You can definitely build it up to be full, or maybe even medium would just be enough coverage for you. But I definitely think it's a good foundation. It wears well throughout the day. It stays. It doesn't transfer. I haven't had any problems with it patching or moving. So when I say moving, I mean like if you put powder over a wet foundation, sometimes it moves and it patches and it looks weird. Or like I have a problem with the foundation that's down the list a little bit. When I'm like contouring and I go to contour my nose foundation could look really good, but then when I go to contour it, it just messes it up because it's too wet and it still moves. That's not a problem with this foundation. I think it sits really nicely and it doesn't move whenever you try and put powders on it. Then the Maybelline Smooth and Dewy foundation. I like this one. Like I said, I go for the dewier foundations. This one leaves my face feeling hydrated and like it doesn't give me that terrible dry feeling throughout the day. But the shades don't match me. I bought the lightest shade, which is 110, and the difference between 110 and the soft in the matte and poreless and the 110 in the dewy and smooth is insane. Like, they are not even the same color. They're not even close. So I wear it still if I get tan enough or if I can blend it down my neck and it looks good. But the foundation oxidizes, and so if you buy your shade and it's like your exact shade, you would probably expect it to oxidize. Also, because it's a dewy foundation, it's not transfer proof. I set all my foundations down with powder even though my skin is dry. I just prefer it to feel dry than it feel like tacky. So it's not transfer proof. It moves around a lot, but it's an okay foundation. I would definitely go for the matte and poreless. Even if your skin is dry like mine, I prefer the matte and poreless over the dewy and smooth. Next is the Maybelline 24 Hour Superstay foundation. So this is definitely a thick foundation, and thick most of the time equals for full coverage. I wrote in all caps that this is a full coverage foundation. It definitely covers everything. And it dries down to like a satin finish, almost matte, but more satin than matte. There are a lot of cons to this foundation though. It's very cakey. I found that you can't bake with it. If you bake with this foundation, it'll cling, and like I usually bake in the under eye region and like sometimes on my forehead, and if you do that and then you look in a mirror, it's just clinging to the powder and it's not cute. So I found that the best way to apply it is with a brush, like a big fluffy brush, and the loose setting powder, not a pressed setting powder, and just like gently go over your whole face. And this is the one that I like kind of foreshadowed to earlier. It moves whenever you try to contour or put blush on or highlighter or anything like that. Like I'll contour and then go to contour my nose, and this foundation doesn't sit well on my nose, but when it does, it looks really good. And then when it sits really well on my nose, I'll go to contour my nose and it'll completely mess up. You could have the lightest hand and it'll just move and look terrible. And also I found that if you want to put highlighter on and like you mist your face with setting spray and then put the highlighter on because that makes it more shiny, the foundation will move. You have to let the setting spray dry completely, which is pointless since you are only using the setting spray to make your highlight more blinding. Also, it's patchy. It patches up like in weird places. Like I'll get one patch right here, but it's like unavoidable, or it'll patch up on my forehead. And it'll just be really random and you can't get it to move back into that spot. It's like a struggle to work with this foundation, but I think once you can get it on right and it like lays nice and it doesn't patch and you don't bake, it looks really good. So this is like my favorite full coverage foundation, but there are a lot of cons to it. You definitely wouldn't want to use this if you were just starting out and or didn't know a lot about makeup. It's something to work with, but because it's cheap and because it's so full coverage, I'm willing to work with it. So it just depends on your personal preferences if you want such a full coverage foundation and if you want to put in the time to try and make it look good. And then finally, in the Maybelline category, we have the Shine Free Stick Foundation, which I just don't like. I put it in this video just because it's another foundation from Maybelline, but it's light coverage, if any coverage. It patches, it streaks, it doesn't blend well, it doesn't last. You could put on foundation and like an hour later it's gonna be gone, and it's just not worth it. I don't like it. I just don't recommend it. Now moving on to a different brand, we have the Wet n Wild Photofocus foundation, and this one has been like all the rage of the drugstore since Wet n Wild put it out. I think they did a really good job. I do like this foundation. It's a thin formula, and like the bottle comes with like a little spatula to kind of scrape it out, and I just use that spatula to rub it on my face, and that might be a problem for some people because then you put it back in the bottle and people are afraid of like bacteria growing in the bottle, and I'm not concerned about that. You could always pour it out onto your hand. You don't have to use a little spatula, but that's something to consider. I'd say it's a medium to full coverage foundation, just like the Maybelline Matte and Poreless. I definitely think they're very similar foundations, and this one probably leans more towards the full coverage, but it's nice because it has a nice thin formula. I think it dries down really well. It dries down to like a satin matte finish, and it doesn't transfer. I've noticed that it's really good at staying where you put it, and also it feels really lightweight. For a full coverage foundation to feel really lightweight is a really good thing, because most full coverage foundations that are thick don't feel lightweight. It feels like you can feel them on your skin all day. The only problems with this foundation are sometimes I find it patching, and this just might be on my skin because I find foundations patch like right here or right in the center of my forehead, and that just might be my skin, but sometimes just like be warned, it does patch, and also it smells like paint. I was very shocked when I bought this foundation and I noticed that it smelled like paint, because I'd seen like other YouTubers review it and none of them had mentioned it. Like somehow they just forgot to mention it, and I opened it and put it on. I was like, oh my goodness, this smells like actual paint. So if you're not a fan of fragrances, definitely don't recommend it. It goes away once you put it on and it dries down. It definitely doesn't stay there, but again, something to note. Then we have the L'Oreal True Match foundation. First of all, this foundation has an amazing shade range. They have warm shades, cool shades, and neutral shades. And then I don't know how dark it gets, but they have like a lot of shades. So I would imagine it gets pretty dark. I would say it's definitely a medium coverage. Any medium coverage foundation you could build to a full coverage, but I think this one is like truly a medium coverage foundation. It goes on smooth, it sets nice, it doesn't patch. I've recommended this one to my sister and I use it on her when I do her makeup, and I don't have a problem with it. I think it's a really good foundation. It's just I personally don't use it, so I don't have the most experience with it to give you the best advice. I've used it in the past, but it's just been a while since I used it, so from what I've used, it works pretty well. So now we have the Revlon Colorstay foundation, and they have two different formulas. They have a dry to normal skin formula and an oily to combination skin formula. I prefer the dry to normal skin formula. Even in middle school when my skin was super oily, I preferred the dry one. I found that the oily combination one oxidizes, and I just didn't prefer the formula as much as I preferred the dry to normal skin formula. I can't speak really on how well it worked. The combination oily one worked because I haven't used it in a really long time and I really don't know. But the dry to normal one I definitely enjoy. It's full coverage. It's a full coverage foundation, and it's got like a thinner formula than most full coverage foundations that are like super thick. It lays on the skin really nice. It doesn't patch. This was my go-to foundation when I had all this acne and I needed to cover it. I think from what I remember, it looked really good and it stayed. It definitely stays, and by the name Colorstay, it keeps true to its word. It stays, it lasts long. if you're looking for a full coverage foundation, I definitely recommend that one. Then moving on to the e.l.f. foundation. And the one thing that I have to say right off the bat is that it doesn't have a good shade range. But it's a full coverage foundation, and it's pretty thick for a full coverage foundation. It dries down to like a satin finish, and it sets pretty well. Like, I haven't noticed a lot of transfer with that foundation. Some of the cons for this foundation are that sometimes it's patchy. Like I said, I get patchy right here and right here. Sometimes it patches to those areas, and also this one you can feel on your skin. Like, you can feel, I would classify it as a heavy foundation because you can feel it throughout the day. Also, just a disclaimer or a note, this foundation gives me a reaction. So if you've noticed so far, I haven't reviewed any CoverGirl foundations, and I'm not going to, because CoverGirl foundations and this e.l.f. foundation give me some sort of reaction where my throat gets really itchy and it's hard to breathe. So this one gives me a lighter end of that reaction. It's just a little hard to breathe, but all CoverGirl foundations, except for one, give me like really bad reactions. So none of the CoverGirl foundations are reviewed in this video, except for one. I will tell you that one in just one second. So yeah, with the e.l.f. foundation, it's it just gives me a reaction, if you wanted to know. I still use it and I enjoy it, but it's just, I have to, get through that part. So the one CoverGirl foundation that I do enjoy is the CG Smoothers Hydrating Makeup. I'm not exactly sure if it's classified as a foundation, but that one's like really light coverage, and it's just a nice foundation to have around. The problem with it is, first of all, it has terrible shade range. Like, it's all just pale, so if you're darker, then it's not going to work for you. I can't find it in stores anymore. I got it from Target, and now when I went back to get another bottle, it's not there anymore, so I don't know if it's discontinued or not, but if you want it, you might have to order it online. But it's a really good light coverage foundation. It's really hydrating, and I don't have any cons about it, so that one's good. Then we have the Rimmel Lasting Finish foundation, and this one is probably my favorite foundation, even though I don't use it that often. But every time that I use it and I'm just like, oh, I should try this again, I always love it. It sets on the skin really, really nice. It doesn't patch, it doesn't move. It's cheap, first of all, and it's a very nice foundation. It wears really well throughout the day, and I just don't wear it as much as I should. It's a full coverage foundation, it's got a thick consistency, and it's another one of those foundations that you have to pour out of the bottle onto your hand. But I really like this one. This is definitely like my top foundation. Then there's the Milani Conceal and Perfect foundation, and this one, right off the bat, I'll just say I'm not a big fan of, but I know that other people are. So it's definitely a full coverage foundation, and it's pretty thick. Like, it comes out very thick. But it is called Conceal and Perfect, so I know that they are adding in extra pigment to conceal as well as just regular foundation. So if you need that extra coverage, that would probably be the one for you. And it has a really bad shade range. My shade is the lightest shade, and luckily it matches me because the next lightest shade is a completely different, like, area of color. Like, they're not even close. So there's a huge jump in shades, and it doesn't have that many shades to begin with. Also, I found that this foundation is cakey and patchy, just like the Maybelline 24-Hour foundation. Because it's so full coverage, it can get cakey, it can get patchy. It's just something you have to look out with super full coverage foundations. And finally, I just wanted to talk about BB creams real quick. If you're looking for a light coverage foundation, or you don't have anything you need to cover up, you just want something as a base, the two BB creams I recommend are the Maybelline BB cream and the Covergirl BB cream. I like both of those. They both work pretty similarly. I use the Covergirl foundation just because I like it a little better, but I recommended the Maybelline one to my mom, and I've recommended it to friends, so that one's good as well. I haven't personally tried it, but I've recommended it to other people and it looks good on them. They're really good for like covering up slight redness, or just like giving you that base without cakiness or heaviness or anything that a foundation gives you. The one BB cream that I wouldn't recommend is the L'Oreal Magic BB cream. It is the one that comes out white, and then when you rub it in, something happens and it turns to like a skin tone shade. I don't like it. It's streaky. It's like there's no product even on your face, and it's just not good. So if you wanted a BB cream, I would stick to either the Covergirl or the Maybelline one. So that's all the foundations on my list. That's probably most of the foundations that I've tried. I know I've tried like a couple Neutrogena ones, and I've definitely tried other ones, but these are the ones that I know about, that I'm positive that I'm giving like a good review on. The other ones I just hadn't tried long enough, or it's been a long time since I've even tried it. So I think I covered most of drugstore foundations in this video. I want to say just like a little list. My number one foundation is probably the Rimmel Long Lasting one, or Lasting Finish one. Then number 2 is definitely the Maybelline Matte and Poreless, and number 3 would be Wet n Wild Photofocus. All of those are medium to full coverage. They last well, they sit well. I think those are the top 3, and they're all pretty cheap. I think they're all like under $5 or something, maybe. And I would say like honorable mention would go to the Maybelline 24-Hour foundation. Even though it has a lot of cons, I still really like it for being so full coverage. And when it works with your skin, it looks really good. Oh, and another honorable mention would be the Revlon Colorstay. That was definitely my holy grail throughout middle school, and I've used it ever since, but I've just tried so many other foundations. I found other ones that have kind of pushed that one to the back, but it's still a great foundation. Highly recommend that one. So that is my list for the foundations that I would recommend for you to buy if you are looking to buy one, and then if you were looking for light coverage, then go with the BB cream. But that is all that I have today. I hope that this helped. I feel like I have a lot of knowledge to share about this topic, so if I didn't hit a foundation, I'm sorry, but I feel like I hit most foundations. So I hope you're all having a great day, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye!